The wind howled across the cold desert of planet Theros. Jake tightened his jacket and stepped carefully over the rocky ground. He was alone on this survey mission, trying to map mineral-rich zones for his company. Night had fallen early, and he was heading back to his portable shelter when he saw something strange in the distance. A faint light, like a weak flame, flickered ahead. No one was supposed to be out here. Not this far from base. Curious and a little worried, Jake moved closer. As he came near, he saw a girl sitting beside a small fire. Her knees hugged tightly to her chest. She had no tent, no food, and only thin cloth wrapped around her. Her skin was pale gray with a faint shimmer, her hair long and silver. She looked up as he approached but said nothing. Her eyes glowed faintly. In the dark, filled with sadness and something else. Fear maybe. Jake stopped a few steps away. "Hey, are you okay?" he asked. The girl didn't answer, just looked at him silently. Jake noticed the fire was dying fast, and the cold wind was getting stronger. He didn't know what species she was, but she looked young, maybe in her late teens. "You don't have a tent?" he asked, glancing around. Still no reply, only a slow shake of her head. Jake hesitated, then pointed toward the hills. "My shelter's not far. It's warm and safe. You can rest there tonight." For a long moment, she didn't move then. She stood slowly, her legs unsteady. She nodded once and followed him without a word. As they walked through the rocky trail, Jake kept glancing back at her. She didn't complain, didn't speak, just followed quietly like a shadow. When they reached his small camp, he unzipped the thermal tent and held it open. She crawled in and sat cross-legged, still hugging herself tightly. Jake pulled out a hot pack and offered it to her. Her fingers were cold when they touched his. She pressed the heat pack to her chest and finally spoke, her voice soft like wind through glass. "No one ever offered me warmth before." Jake blinked, unsure what to say. She sounded honest, and her words were simple. He handed her a food bar and a thermal blanket. She took both, but didn't eat right away. Just stared at the food like she didn't trust it. "What's your name?" Jake asked, sitting across from her. She made a sound, not a word, but a soft tone, followed by a light vibration in her throat. He frowned, trying to copy the sound, but failed. She smiled for the first time. "Just a little, you can call M.E.V., she said finally. "V," Jake repeated. "All right, V, I'm Jake." They ate quietly. The only sound was the soft hum of the heater and the outside wind. Jake asked a few more questions, but she gave short answers or none at all. She didn't say where she was from or why she was alone, but she did say one thing. "I was told not to speak to humans," she said, voice low. Jake raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "They fear what I am." Before he could ask what that meant, she lay down and curled into the blanket. Jake watched her for a moment, then turned off the lights and lay down too. But his mind kept spinning. Who was she? Why was she out here? Why didn't she have shelter or supplies? Around midnight, Jake woke suddenly. The air inside the tent felt strange charged, like before a lightning strike. He sat up slowly and saw V sitting upright, eyes glowing bright. She was whispering words in that same unknown language, her hands drawing glowing symbols in the air. The symbols floated briefly before fading into the dark. Her face looked calm, focused, almost like she was dreaming while awake. Jake didn't move, just watched silently. After a minute, she stopped, her hands lowering. She turned her head and looked at him. "You should sleep," she said softly. "Tomorrow, things will change." Jake didn't know what she meant, but something deep inside him said she was right. He lay back down, eyes open in the dark. Beside him, an alien girl without a tent, without fear, and with secrets she hadn't yet told. And the strange feeling in the air didn't leave, it only grew stronger. Tomorrow would come, but Jake knew this night, the night he invited her in, was just the beginning of something much bigger. Jake woke to silence, but it wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of silence that made his skin feel tight, like the air itself was waiting. He sat up slowly and looked around the tent. V was already awake, sitting at the entrance. Staring outside, her silver hair moved gently with the wind, but she didn't blink. She hadn't said another word since her strange whispering last night. Jake stepped toward her, unsure if she was angry, scared, or simply thinking. He crouched beside her and asked, "Did you sleep at all?" She gave a soft answer, almost too quiet to hear. "I don't sleep like you." Jake tilted his head. "What does that mean?" She didn't answer right away, then finally said, "I rest with my mind open, so I can hear them if they come." Jake felt a chill even though the heater was still on. "Who are you afraid of, V?" he asked gently. She didn't look at him when she spoke next. Not fear, not anymore, just awareness. Jake wanted to ask more, but her tone stopped him. Instead, he handed her a pouch of hot water and another food bar. This time, she ate it slowly, chewing like she was tasting something for the first time. Then she spoke again. "Your name is Jake. It means holder of strength, yes?" Jake blinked in surprise. "How do you know that?" "I don't know. I just feel meanings when I hear sounds," she said simply. "But when you say my name, it has no meaning to you." He scratched his head. "I mean, I called you V because that sound you made. It kind of sounded like the letter V." She smiled faintly. "It's not a name, it's a signal. I was not given a name when I was born." Jake looked at her, heart sinking a little. "No name?" "Nothing at all." She nodded. "We were not named, we were numbered, and only called when needed." The words felt heavy in the air. Jake couldn't imagine growing up like that, if that was even the right word for what she had been through. He leaned back and sat beside her, both of them now staring at the quiet hills beyond. Finally, he asked, "So, what do I call you, really?" She thought for a moment, then said softly, "Keep calling me V. I like how it sounds when you say it." There was something strange about her presence, something that felt more than alien. It was like being with someone made of ancient secrets and broken trust. As they walked together later that day, trying to scout the next mining ridge, V kept glancing at the sky. Jake noticed and asked, "You see something up there?" She pointed, but there was nothing. "Still," she said. "They use the clouds to mask their movements." Jake laughed nervously. "Who? Again?" She looked at him, her glowing eyes serious. "Those who made me." That night, Jake double-checked all his motion detectors and alarm sensors. He didn't want to admit it, but her words stayed with him. He wasn't even sure if she was fully real. Sometimes her body seemed to flicker at the edges like static on a screen. But when he reached for her hand, she was solid, warm, and very much present. As they sat by the heater again, V picked up Jake's broken scanner. He was about to tell her not to bother. It hadn't worked in days. But before he could speak, she touched the back panel, and light ran across it like a wave. The scanner flickered to life, fully functional. Jake stared at her in disbelief. How did you do that?" V looked at her hands, almost confused herself. "It's part of me. A small part, but I was not allowed to use it before." Jake narrowed his eyes. "Not allowed by who?" She didn't answer, just looked away. Later that night, when Jake lay down to rest, he left the light slightly on. He didn't feel fear, just a deep sense of curiosity and confusion. V sat in the same place as the night before. Her head tilted up like she was listening to music only she could hear. Jake's eyes drifted closed, but just before sleep took him, he heard her whisper, "If they come tonight, I won't let them take you." He didn't know what that meant, or why she would say it, but he believed her, even without a name. Even with glowing eyes and strange powers, Jake trusted her. And outside the tent, deep under the cover of night, something else was indeed drawing closer. Jake woke with a sudden jerk, the sound of a loud, sharp beep ringing in his ears. The alarm light on his motion detector flashed red. Something was moving outside the tent. He sat up, heart racing, reaching for the small handheld scanner he kept by his side. V was already awake, sitting perfectly still, her eyes glowing like quiet lanterns in the dark. She didn't look afraid, but her body was tense. She turned to Jake and whispered, "They are here." Jake's fingers tightened. Around his scanner. Who's here? What do you mean? V moved closer to the tent wall and slowly unzipped a corner, just enough to see. The cold night air slipped inside like a ghost. But Jake barely noticed. He leaned forward, staring through the opening. There was nothing. At first just sand, rocks, and shadows. But then, faint glowing marks appeared on the ground. Shaped like footprints, they moved slowly, like something invisible was walking across the dust. The footprints pulsed with faint blue light, spreading out in a circle around the camp. Jake's mouth went dry. What the hell is that? V answered without looking at him. Trackers. Scouts. They are looking for me. Jake backed away from the opening, his hand now gripping a flare gun. Are they going to attack us? No, she said calmly. Not if I go outside. Jake grabbed her arm. You're not going anywhere. They'll take you. Her face softened for a moment. They won't take me. Not while you're watching. Before Jake could stop her, she crawled out through the opening into the cold night. The glowing footprints paused, then began to move again, closer this time. Jake felt every second stretch like a rope about to snap. He pulled the zipper open wider and saw V standing still, her arms at her sides, her silver hair blowing in the wind. Shapes began to appear in the air, tall, thin outlines that shimmered. Like heat waves, they had too many limbs, long heads, and eyes that blinked sideways. They looked like ghosts made of glass. Jake raised the flare gun, ready to shoot if they touched her, but none of the creatures moved closer. They circled her, whispering in voices Jake couldn't understand. He saw her lips move in response, but he heard no sound. Then one of the shapes stepped forward and raised a hand toward her face. Jake's finger tensed on the trigger. V didn't flinch. She just stared up at the figure silently. Then the figure turned to look at the tent right at Jake. Even though he knew it couldn't see him clearly, he felt the weight of that gaze. Suddenly, all the creatures stepped back, their bodies flickering. They vanished into the night air, leaving no sound behind. V stood alone in the circle of footprints, still glowing softly. She turned and walked back to the tent without a word. Jake quickly moved aside, letting her crawl back in. He zipped. The tent shut and stared at her, heart pounding. What just happened? He asked, his voice cracking a little. They saw you, V said softly. And that changed everything. Jake looked confused. What do you mean? V wrapped the blanket around herself and whispered, They don't understand kindness. It confuses them. Jake sat down slowly, trying to process what he had just seen. But they'll come back, right? V nodded, yes. Next time, they might bring a speaker. Jake blinked. A speaker? They don't talk to each other with words, she explained. They use thoughts, shapes, emotion. But when dealing with humans, they send a speaker. Jake ran a hand through his hair. And what will this speaker want? V looked at him for a long time, then said, To ask why a human would protect something broken like me. Jake stared at her. You're not broken. She looked down, smiling faintly. Then you're the first to say so. That night, sleep didn't come easy. Jake lay awake, feeling like the stars above the tent were watching him. Somewhere out in the dark, invisible eyes had seen him, judged him, and for now decided to wait. But Jake knew waiting was never safe, not in a world like this. V's breathing was soft beside him. Steady. She hadn't told him everything. He could feel it in his bones. There was a story behind those glowing eyes, a past buried deep beneath silence and symbols. And now, whatever hunted her knew his face too. The weirdness of the night was no longer just strange. It had become dangerous, and Jake had no idea how deep this would go. The sun rose slowly over the sharp rocks of Theros, but it didn't bring comfort. Jake stepped out of the tent and looked around carefully. The glowing footprints from last night were gone, erased by wind and dust. He scanned the area twice, but everything looked quiet, almost too quiet. V stayed inside, silent again, like a stone that had gone cold. She hadn't said much after returning from the strange meeting with the glass-like creatures. Jake brought her warm water and a fresh ration. Placing them beside her without a word, she stared at the food for a while, then finally looked up. "They're not gone," she said, her voice flat. "They're just hiding again." Jake sat down across from her, still unsure what to say or even what to believe anymore. "You said they'd bring a speaker next," he said. "What does that mean for us?" V touched the floor of the tent lightly with her fingers, drawing small lines with her nail. "They want to know what I've become," she whispered. "They never expected me to grow this far." Jake frowned. "Grow? Like what stronger?" She nodded once, smarter, freer, more aware. "I wasn't supposed to survive alone." Jake leaned forward, trying to catch every word. "What exactly are you, V?" He asked gently. "You fix machines by touching them. You see things that aren't there. You speak in symbols, and I was made, not born," she finished for him, eyes locked on his. Jake blinked, trying to understand. "You mean like a clone? A robot?" She shook her head. "Not machine, not organic, something in between." "They called us trial units." Jake's heart sank. "So you're part of an experiment?" "Yes," she whispered. "Created in labs that float above moons. Tested for control, balance, silence." He couldn't find the words to respond, only stared at her as she continued. "I was Unit 317. They didn't give us names or choices. Just numbers and rules." A chill ran down Jake's back. "But you're not with them anymore," he said. "You escaped." Her lips trembled for a second, then steadied. "No, I was discarded," she said. "I was called defective." Jake clenched his fists, his chest tight with anger he didn't fully understand. "You're not defective," he said sharply. "You're more human than some people I've met." V's eyes widened just a little, like the word surprised her. Then she smiled, a soft, broken kind of smile, like someone trying to remember how just then. The scanner beeped 3 sharp pulses. Jake jumped and grabbed it, eyes darting to the screen. Something was moving fast on the western ridge, too fast for an animal, too smooth for a natural shape. V stood without hesitation and said, "That's the speaker." Jake pulled his jacket on and grabbed the flare gun again. "What does it want?" he asked as they both stepped out of the tent. V's voice was calm, but firm. "It will talk and judge." The sky above the ridge shimmered slightly, like glass catching sunlight. Then the shape appeared floating, silver and tall. It didn't walk. It hovered just above the ground, like gravity didn't apply to it. Its face was a mask of shifting patterns. Not eyes or a mouth, just moving symbols. It stopped about 30 feet from them and spoke without sound. Jake didn't hear words. But something slid into his mind like wind through a crack. A voice not loud, but heavy, filled with strange rhythm and alien thought. "You are human," it said inside his mind, "and you shelter a broken construct." Jake narrowed his eyes, stepping closer to V protectively. "She's not broken," he said out loud. "She's alive, and she deserves better than whatever you gave her." The voice responded quickly. "She was made for silence, not for purpose, not for freedom." V raised her hand slowly. "I chose silence, but he gave me words again." The speaker's body shifted, light flashing across its chest. "You are becoming unstable," it said to her. "You will be removed before the infection spreads." "Infection?" Jake asked, angry now. "What infection?" The voice answered coldly, "Human emotion." For a long second, no one moved. Then V stepped forward, standing between Jake and the speaker. "I don't want to hide anymore," she said, "and I won't be quiet." The ground trembled slightly beneath her feet, and her body began to glow brighter. The speaker didn't retreat, but it shimmered with warning pulses. "You forced me to react," it said. V didn't flinch. "Then do what you came to do." But before the creature could respond, the scanner in Jake's hand burst with static. Something else was coming from behind the ridge, faster, heavier, and much larger. The speaker froze midair, its light patterns dimming quickly. V's eyes widened, and for the first time her voice shook. "They sent a hunter," she said. "They're not here to talk anymore." The cave smelled like burned metal. The air was thick with smoke and sparks. Mira stood with one hand stretched toward the barrier of light, holding it in place, her fingers trembling. Leo stayed close beside her, sweat running down his neck. Outside, red beams lit up the fog, cutting into the ground, turning stone to dust. The hunters didn't speak. They didn't shout orders or fire randomly. They moved like they already knew where their prey was hiding. Like they had been waiting years for this very moment. Leo peeked again and counted at least 4 of them. Their armor black with red lines pulsing along their arms and helmets. Their boots didn't even touch the ground. One of them raised his arm and aimed a long, thin weapon straight at the barrier. Mira gritted her teeth and shouted a single word in that strange language. The shield flared bright white, deflecting the beam with a hiss, but Mira stumbled backward, coughing blood into her hand. Leo caught her before she fell. "You're pushing too hard," he said. "They're gonna break through." She nodded weakly. "Then we don't wait," she whispered. "We run." "But how?" Leo asked, looking around the cave. "We're trapped." Mira reached into her belt pouch and pulled out a glowing disc. She slammed it against the wall behind them. It stuck, blinked twice, then exploded without a sound. A new path opened behind. The blast narrow, dark, but real. "This leads to the old tunnels," she said, grabbing his arm. "Hurry." They ran through the smoke, the cave trembling behind them as the hunters fired again, beams slicing through the space they'd just escaped. The new tunnel was tight, barely wide enough for Leo's shoulders, and the further they went, the colder it got. He could barely see Mira ahead, her outline glowing faintly, guiding him. They didn't speak. They didn't stop. Time lost meaning. As the tunnel twisted down, deeper and deeper into the mountain, finally, they reached a wide chamber lit by pale crystals growing from the walls. Mira collapsed to her knees, her face pale, her body shaking. Leo dropped beside her, breathing hard. "Why are they hunting you?" he asked again, more firmly this time. "What did you do?" Mira didn't answer right away. She looked around the chamber like it was familiar, like it hurt to remember. She finally whispered, "I was born to lead, not to live." Leo frowned. "What does that mean?" She reached out and touched one of the crystals, her palm glowing against it. A soft hum filled the chamber, and slowly, images began to form in the air. Not like the disc from before. These were sharper, brighter, clearer. He saw a grand hall, filled with alien faces, soldiers kneeling before a young girl with silver eyes. He saw crowds cheering, then fires burning, chains snapping, shadows swallowing the throne, and the girl falling from the sky like a comet. "That's you," Leo said, watching the memories move like wind. "You were their queen. I still..." She said bitterly, "but only in name, not in power." Leo stood and walked in a slow circle around the images. "Then who are the hunters?" he asked. "Rebels?" Mira shook her head. "Guardians, sworn to protect the throne. They believe I've betrayed it by living." "That's insane," Leo said. "They're trying to kill the one they're supposed to protect." "To them, I died years ago," she said. "Anyone who returns from death is a curse, not a queen." Leo didn't know what to say. He sat down beside her again, staring at the images fading from the air. Mira pulled her knees close to her chest, her voice quieter now. "They say my blood is dangerous. It holds light no one else carries. Even my own people feared it." Leo looked at her, something in his chest twisting. "And yet, I invited you in without knowing anything." She turned to him slowly, her silver eyes tired. "You didn't see a queen, or a curse. You saw someone cold and alone." "Yeah," he said softly. "And now I've got hunters trying to kill me too." A small smile touched her lips. The first he'd seen. "That part wasn't planned," she said. Leo chuckled bitterly, then grew serious again. "What now?" She stood slowly, walking to the far wall of the chamber, pressing her hand against a smooth stone. A section slid open, revealing steps leading even deeper. A faint golden light coming from below. "We find the machine," she said. "If it Still works. It may be our only chance. Leo stared into the passage, his fingers tightening around the stone in his pocket. What kind of machine? She didn't turn around. One that can open a path to the stars, or destroy everything that remembers me. For a moment, neither of them moved. The chamber quiet again, except for the hum of fading crystals. Leo knew then his night in the tent had become something much bigger. He hadn't just invited a girl into shelter. He had opened a door to a storm that had waited lifetimes to rise, and it was far from over. The stairs felt endless. The deeper Jake followed V, the warmer the air became. It was strange outside. The world was cold and full of dust, but down here, the stone walls seemed to breathe heat. Each step echoed like a heartbeat. Slow and steady, V moved ahead, her silver hair glowing faintly in the golden light rising from below. Jake had stopped asking questions, not because he didn't have any, but because he wasn't sure he could understand the answers anymore. She had been a weapon, a queen, a discarded creation, and now she was something else entirely. He followed her not out of duty, but because something inside him knew he was already part of whatever came next. When they reached the final step, the chamber opened wide, and Jake's breath caught in his throat. The room was massive round, with high ceilings that seemed to touch the sky even beneath the mountain. At the center stood a machine unlike anything he had ever seen. It looked like a tree made of light and metal, its roots buried deep into the stone, its branches reaching toward the ceiling. Pulsing slowly, symbols moved across its surface like flowing water, glowing and shifting. As if they were alive, V stepped toward it and placed her hand on the core. The machine responded instantly, sending out a soft hum that vibrated through the floor and into Jake's bones. "It still remembers me," she whispered, her voice sounding distant. Jake walked up beside her carefully, eyes wide. "What is this place?" V didn't turn to look at him. "This is the core of my people's oldest weapon." "Or their final hope," Jake frowned. "Which one is it now?" She finally turned, her eyes glowing with gold light now instead of silver. "That depends on what I choose," she said. He stared at her, unsure if he should feel fear or wonder. The machine shifted again, a ring of light spinning around them slowly, scanning them both. Then a low voice echoed in the chamber. Mechanical but not lifeless. DNA match confirmed. Status: Queen reactivated. Jake took a step back. "It's calling you Queen again." V nodded slowly. "It never stopped." "I just stopped listening." Suddenly, the ground trembled. A warning pulse ran through the air from far above. A sound echoed down through the stone, a heavy crack. A roar. "They found the path," V said. "The hunters are coming." Jake turned toward the stairway, gripping the flare gun again. "Can this machine fight?" V walked to the center of the core, stepping onto a platform that lifted her slowly into the air. "It doesn't fight," she said. "It awakens." Light spread through the room like a storm, symbols flying through the air, wrapping around her body like armor, her feet lifted off the ground, hair floating, eyes burning with power. Jake shielded his face as the machine let out a deep pulse, shaking the walls. Then everything went still. V floated gently back to the floor, now wrapped in glowing light, her voice layered with power. "They won't take us easily now," she said. Jake stared, stunned. What did you just do?" "I called the star map," she said. "It will open the ancient door, one that leads far from here." Before Jake could speak again, the stairs behind them cracked, dust pouring down like rain. The hunters were close, too close. "Go," V said, pointing toward a hidden tunnel behind the machine. "That path leads to the launch chamber." Jake hesitated. "What about you?" She smiled gently. "I'll hold them long enough. I have to finish what I started." Jake's fists clenched. "I didn't bring you into my tent just to watch you die now." V walked to him and gently pressed something into his hand. It was a small glowing crystal, warm and humming softly. "If I fall," she whispered, "that will guide you to safety. But if I live, I'll come for you." Jake looked down at the crystal, then back at her. She turned toward the stairs, hands glowing brighter now, the chamber pulsing with light. He ran toward the tunnel, heart pounding, air burning in his lungs, as he disappeared into the shadows. A blast of energy lit up the chamber behind him, followed by a roar like thunder. He didn't look back, he couldn't, because for the first time, he was afraid not for himself, but for the girl who had changed everything. And somewhere deep inside, he hoped this wasn't the end, not of her, not of them, not of the story that began with one small invitation and the strangest night of his life. The stone door opened slowly, not with a sound, but with pressure, like the world holding its breath. Jake stepped forward beside V, the glow from her body lighting their way. The air felt thick, humming with invisible force, and something far ahead was waiting, not moving, not speaking, just watching. They walked together into a vast chamber, far bigger than any they'd seen before. The walls curved high into darkness, covered in ancient symbols that pulsed like heartbeat veins. In the center stood a tall figure, motionless and cloaked. In shadow, not like the hunters, not like the speaker. This one felt old, like it had never moved but had always been there. Jake stopped, feeling a weight press against his chest, not pain, but pressure. V stepped ahead, her voice calm but firm. "I know who you are." The shadow stirred, not walking, just shifting shape like smoke caught in memory. "I made you," the voice said, cold and smooth like flowing water over ice. V's hands clenched. "Then you know I was never yours to break." The figure pulsed once, the chamber flashing dim light. "You were incomplete." "I was unfinished," she corrected, "until I met him." Jake swallowed hard as the shadow turned toward him. "You are not part of the code," it said. "You are an error." "I'm a human," Jake said, voice steady. "And you're afraid of what she's become with someone like me." The figure shimmered again, the chamber trembling. "She threatens balance," it said. "The purpose of silence is not to speak." V stepped forward again, glowing brighter now. "Then listen closely, because I won't be quiet anymore." The air cracked with invisible tension, and the overseer raised one hand. A wave of force shot forward like a silent explosion. Jake was thrown back, hitting the ground hard. The wind knocked from his lungs, but V stood firm, her light pushing back against the wave, bending it, twisting it, until it broke apart. From the glowing lines on the wall, shapes began to rise, failed versions of her, trial units with hollow eyes and lifeless movements. The overseer sent them forward, a wall of forgotten experiments meant to silence her once and for all. V didn't step back, she stepped forward, arms wide, voice rising like thunder wrapped in light. "I'm not like them," she cried. "I chose who I am." The light from her body expanded, sweeping through the chamber like a star being born. The trial units stopped, flickered, then dropped to their knees. One by one, they dimmed, as if something inside them had been freed. The overseer's shape trembled for the first time. Jake struggled to his feet, watching as V stepped into the center of the chamber, her hands raised. The air around her exploded into golden light, ancient energy unlocking from the walls. The entire chamber responded not to the overseer, but to her. She had become the command, the core, the will, with a scream of metal and fire. The overseer cracked down the center, its voice stuttering. "This is not protocol." "No," V said gently. "It's a new story," and with one last pulse of light, the overseer vanished, shattered like glass into silence. The chamber went quiet, the tension lifting like smoke and wind. The walls dimmed slowly, the symbols still glowing, but calm now. V turned to Jake, her body still glowing softly. "It's over," she said, her voice no longer layered, just hers, pure and steady. Jake walked to her, bruised but smiling. "What happens now?" She looked up at the high ceiling, the stars peeking through cracks above. "We leave," she said. "We go wherever this light takes us." He nodded. "Together?" She smiled, the same way she had that first night in his tent. Always. They left the ancient chamber behind. The path ahead now open. V no longer walked in silence, no longer hiding what she was. And Jake no longer walked alone. He had invited a strange girl into his shelter, not knowing her name, her past, or her purpose. And she had shown him a world deeper and brighter than he ever imagined. The weirdest night of his life had become the beginning of everything. And as the two figures walked into the morning light, something new began to bloom. Something no one had written, no one had controlled, something truly human.